I talked to the guy who runs Lucky Dog this morning, and he's like, if the internet is down, I can't map my new crop rotation. You know, it's essential. If you run a garage, you need broadband, so you can keep up with your customer service. If you're a student, you need broadband. So this is an idea that I'm shamelessly stealing from FDR. FDR in the 1930s, in the face of extraordinary economic crisis, worked together with Republican senators on the REA, the Rural Electrification Act. Every last farmhouse gets electricity. Every last trailer gets electricity. Every last schoolhouse gets electricity. We're going to figure it out by hook or by crook, different ways in different places. Great for the jobs going in, and great for the jobs that it lit up. 10 years later, every last farmhouse, the second part of REA, Rural Electrification Act, is you get telephone. So what is REA for the 21st century? Every last farmhouse gets broadband. Think of what that would do to this region. Think of the people who want to move to one of the most beautiful places in the world and can't because they can't work because of broadband. It's a real drag, it's a real rural crisis, and I believe I can work with Republican Congress members on this issue because it's a rural issue across the country right now. A second area which oh, and by the way, the reason that's not happening isn't because this isn't sort of an obvious idea. Everybody knows that you need broadband now. It's not happening because the incumbents, and I don't mean people who are holding office, I mean Time Warner and Verizon, are blocking it. They are spending their money on lobbying, they're spending their money on campaigns, and we need to be very clear about who is getting in the way of us moving forward. A second area is sort of similar, and it's renewable energy. We can have 100% renewable energy in New York State. We can do it. There's a wonderful Stanford study that showed how every area would get different parts of renewable energy serving different areas. The thing that's blocking us, the reason that we keep having infrastructure fights is the fossil fuel industry has so much political power. So people sometimes talk about the need for a technological breakthrough on renewable energy. We don't need a technological breakthrough, we need a political breakthrough. We need to talk about ExxonMobil, we need to talk about the Koch brothers, we need to talk about the companies that are standing in the way of renewable energy. A third area is we just got to redo trade. I've been holding forums about TPP or participating in forums against the Trans-Pacific Partnership, but we also should repeal NAFTA. And I think we have to move forward on a 21st century trade vision that is not going down this path, that has not worked for us. We are importing, right here, we're importing dairy protein from New Zealand, Mexico, and China. We shouldn't be doing that. Kids are eating apples from Peru, not from the neighboring orchard. Again, this serves some of the big ag companies, but it is not serving the farmer of the middle, which is the center of a thriving rural economy. And also the center of a healthy economy. Because mid-sized farmers have greater biodiversity, they treat the land better, they treat the livestock better if they have livestock, treat the workers better. We're sort of broken on food, and I think we're broken because of corruption, right? So my vision for trade is that a 21st century trade approach, it actually ties in with war and peace in some ways too. Trade is always about war and peace, it's never just about trade. I don't want to be in a world where we are so dependent on goods from China that if we have a foreign policy disagreement, that's a problem. 100% of our vitamin C now basically comes from China. 100%.
Of our what?
Vitamin C. And then for sort of key components of drugs that many people use, it's 80–90%. Key components are in these numbers. I think in a future trade world, we should be looking at two different things that are sort of at the core of my vision. One is we shouldn't be so dependent on another country that it's a problem when we have a foreign policy disagreement. So we should have trade, but not create dependencies. We shouldn't have 100% of anything coming from any country. Another is we can make things here. I want to live in a world where people grow American, eat American, buy American, build American, sew, make sneakers, make tractors here. And we can do that. We have the talent, we have the resources, and these trade deals have gutted our jobs, shipped them overseas, and forced us to compete with people who are making, pennies on pennies per hour. So I really believe, and I think you can see that left, right, center. People are ready to move in a different direction on trade. So those are all part of the vision I have. My campaign started a little over 3 months ago. It's been extremely exciting. We have Kirsten Gillibrand's support, my kind support, who some of you might know. Tomorrow I'm getting endorsed by the CWA. Very excited about. NYSIT has endorsed. And these endorsements are very meaningful to me because, I'm happy to stand with American labor. I'm happy to stand with CWA workers against Verizon in this fight. And I've been very happy to work with teachers against the Common Core threat and the privatization threat. But the core of our campaign has been local groups. We have about 18 grassroots groups all around the district who are organizing our events. Giving us suggestions, giving us feedback, sharing ideas, and we're building it that way because that's not just the way I want to win. It's the way that I want to, in Congress, be connected to all the communities of the 19th District. This district, as you know, has at its beating heart a wonderful independent spirit. People make up their own minds. They're not going to vote on party lines. They're not going to vote based on endorsements. They're going to vote based on who they feel, when the door is shut, is going to be fighting for them. I hope you can see that after what I've been doing for the last over a decade, fighting for people whose voices are shut out, I will keep fighting for you, and I don't even want to shut the door. So thank you for coming out tonight, and I look forward to your comments and questions. Said before, people are so trained to ask questions, and I'm happy to answer questions, but this is also a chance for me to learn from you. So you don't have to say, I have this problem, but I don't know how it relates to legislation. Just tell me the problem, right? That's my job, is to figure out how it relates to legislation.
Yeah, the whole thing with TPP is that it allows us to get goods at a lower price. Then we can create them ourselves. How do you change that?
So the way I understand the TPP, and I disagree with Obama on this, is he sees, again, this is my understanding, not his, is that there's a real trade imbalance with China, and the way to right that imbalance is to join into a trade association with other countries. I think the way to deal with the trade imbalance with China is not to double down on a failed trade strategy, but actually change the trade strategy altogether. What I want to see is a world in which, I think I talked about this, like 1 in 5 people are making something. We're in a society where people are making and growing things locally. And that does allow people to have better wages, secure jobs, buying from something that, if not your neighbor, somebody from within 100 miles made. That is an overall more thriving economy. NAFTA has lost us jobs. There were a lot of promises about NAFTA. They didn't come through.
But if we're dealing with a society, with a competitive society that's paying their workers $15 a week, and we're paying our workers $15 an hour, how do we compete with that?
The way we compete with it is changing our trade policy. So right now, our trade policy opens up our workers to that direct competition. Your neighbor is competing with somebody who's getting $15 a week. They shouldn't have to be in direct competition. We can choose to prioritize American-made stuff with our trade policy. We don't have to have this direct competition model. That's what I'm talking about, is going back to NAFTA and rewriting the way that we think about trade from the start. There's often in globalization talk, there's language which you and I may disagree on that, and that's fine. But there's language which
I'm just playing devil's advocate.
Which you might hear sometimes, like, the horse has left the barn. The train has left the station. It's too late. That's never true in a democracy. If that was true in 1899, it would have been too late on a whole bunch of different things, because steel and oil had way too much power. It's never too late. The idea of democracy is we get to decide, we here, not a few donors who like TPP, not a few big companies that like offshoring their money so they don't have to pay taxes. We here get to decide the kind of society we want to live in. And if we want to live in a society where people make things here and grow things here and raise things here, we've got to change our trade policy.
So how does that translate into boosting the essential infrastructures that are needed? Rural economies have been deteriorating since way before NAFTA was initiated. Dairy farms, we've got here in the early 90s, dairy farms were few and far between, or even fewer now, even though our county is still a big dairy producer. So how do you do that? I remember 15 years ago when Hillary came to speak. I'm an adjunct instructor at SUNY Delhi, and she's become pals with Candace Vanko, who's leaving soon. And she would often come to Delhi to give her press conferences to make announcements. And one of them was increasing and strengthening broadband access to rural areas. That was over a dozen years ago.
Yes.
And Hillary was senator then, and she made some great strides. But how does one hand help the other? So that people will recognize this and say, heck with it, I'm going to Walmart, it's so much cheaper. I mean, there have been times when I've been in an area, not here, where I can't find it anywhere. Not only can I not find it anywhere else but Walmart, it's cheaper too, but I can't find it anywhere else, so I go to Walmart for that one particular thing. How do we change that?
You just raised a whole bunch of different things, and they're all really important.
Yeah, you ought to live with her.
I said that they're all really important. Remember that later. So I don't know if I'll address all of them, but I can address a few. One, which is, I think it's a question about how we get there and where